present, and we're going to hear the roll call.
Representative Adams.
Here.
Bailey.
Here.
Bauer. Bordelon.
Here.
Brayman. Casper.
Here.
Chase.
Here.
Sini. Doyle.
Here.
Frickman.
Here.
Gustafson. Hanscom.
Here.
Katowski.
Here.
Marley. Marshall. Martin.
Here.
Massett.
Here.
McDermott.
Here.
Melendez.
Here.
Mello Miller.
Here.
Merritt.
Here.
Monahan.
Here.
Newsom.
Here.
Oliver.
Here.
Pasqualini.
Here.
Perry.
Here.
Powers.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Richards.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Stanford.
Here.
Irma Streeter.
Here.
Jim Streeter.
Here.
Strode.
Here.
Wagner. Washington.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Whitehouse.
Here.
Whitney.
Here.
And Evan.
Here.
You have 34 members present.
And we have a quorum.
Oh, yes, you do.
So let's please rise and have a moment of silence. And Representative Martin, would you lead us in the salute, please? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes from our February 14th Valentine's Day meeting. And so do I have a motion?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from February 14th. Is there any discussion?
Was that Monahan and Adams, right?
Yes. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Thank you. All right, so at this point in our meeting, we're going to move to citizens' petitions. So this is the portion of the RTM agenda where the RTM welcomes comments from citizens. Each presentation should be limited to 10 minutes or less, and citizens should, if possible, submit written comments. Presentations should be limited to matters pertinent to Groton. The moderator, or members through the moderator, shall ask questions only in order to clarify the speaker's presentation. Responses may be given by the moderator and/or by the town manager. Citizens should make their presentations from the lectern and state their names and addresses for the record. Are there any citizens who wish to speak? No? Okay. Moving on. So I will just tell you that I received information from Representative Gustafson and Representative Martin that they are unable to be with us tonight. And I also received a letter of resignation from Representative Letitia Johnson. What?
Patty Wagner contacted us also.
Did I say Patty Wagner?
Nope.
Oh, sorry. Patty Wagner, not Representative Martin, sorry. I messed that up. I have all these things written on my notes, so sorry about that. Patty Wagner and James Gustafson. And that's the communications that I've received. And I think Kate may, Representative Richards, would you like to add a communication?
I received an email sent from someone in my district and to all of the RTM members of our district. This was on March 4th, and we haven't met since then, so I'm reporting it now. This is from Hugh Barton. He says, "Hi, I will not be able to attend the March 28th budget hearing, so I'm emailing to express my support for continuing support for the Mystic and Noank Library. I am a library user and contributor in addition to a District 6 taxpayer. Libraries are important public resources that need our continued support even in this electronic age. Their activities are a source of community engagement. Libraries further an interest in knowledge and truth as differentiated from fiction, something that is needed even more in this day and age. I look forward to learning that you have voted for Groton, continuing to value and support the Mystic and Noank and other libraries in town. Thanks, Hugh A. Barton.
Thank you. All right, the next on the agenda, if there are no more communications, is a report from our town manager. Mr. Burt?
Good evening. If you don't have one, there should be copies of the report over on the table. Financials as of March 31st, the general fund balance is approximately $8.9 million, which is 7.44% of the FYE 2018 general fund adjusted budget. Contingency fund is approximately $279,000 right now, and then we still have about $1.1 million in the capital reserve fund. For the monthly report, I've actually brought some guests. Rick Norris from our Public Works and Jack Butkus from Arcadis are here to update everybody on the school project. So.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Moderator, I'm happy to be here. Members of the RTM, it's good to see you. Some of you know me, a lot of you may not at this point because I haven't been involved in the government end for a long time. But my name is Rick Norris. As the manager said, I work for the town Public Works Department as the project manager for the school projects. But Jack Butkus is our owner's rep from Arcadis Company. They're assisting us by putting these things together, manage the projects. We'll actually have project managers from them on each of the 3 schools as we move forward. So without further ado, we'll move forward with our brief presentation, and I'll try and keep it brief. We have, as you're probably aware, we had 3 grants that were authorized by this last year's legislative session. One for the middle school. You can see the reimbursement amounts. Cutler Middle School, which was slated as a diversity school, yes, as a diversity school, and it took a lot of effort by our state representatives to get that through and coded as a diversity school. So that's an 80% reimbursement rate. Westside Middle School, again, is the original project was renovated as new. That's at 57.5%. If people are wondering about the grants, I've had several questions. Have the grants been signed and approved? Certainly, we received about $425 reimbursement already on the high school design work and about $275 on the elementary schools. So we are in the program. We're able to apply for grants every other month, and we have the ability to look forward for a 3-month look ahead. So as we move forward, we'll be able to keep at least until we get in the construction phase, which is a lot more expensive, be able to recoup some of the monies we spend for the design phase. This is the program level schedule. You'll see the new middle school, there's some of the areas grayed out. That's because we're still working, and the town manager and our town attorney is working on the conversion of the Merritt property. So there is some uncertainty there of what the schedule will actually be. We're still shooting for opening that school in 2020, but it depends on how much we're delayed through this judicial process that we have to go through. Cutler and Westside elementary schools should basically be on the same track. In the best case, and I can talk about this a little bit further later, but we're either going to renovate as new or build new at those school sites on the same site, and that depends on what the cost is and what the state Office of School Construction allows us to do. What we have next is we'll have 3 project teams. You'll notice on the left side is where the major variance is, because depending on whether we're in the town or the city, the first one here shows the consolidated middle school team. We do have an architect. SLAM Consortium is the architect, and we also have a construction manager, O&G. We're working right now to sign contracts with the licensed environmental professional and a commissioning agent for those buildings, and actually all 3 schools. The second project team is Cutler. That's a little bit different in the box on the left because it's in the Mystic Fire District. So, and you'll see on the next one that some of it relies on the fire district, zoning areas, those sorts of things. So the team's a little bit different. We are in the process, we actually have selected an architect, and we're hoping to get that contract signed in the next few weeks. We are expecting qualification input for CMs next Tuesday, and we'll be reviewing that, calling them in for interviews and getting them on board so we can move forward with the decision of whether we can build new or we have to renovate. We have a few pictures we'd like to show you. This is the middle school site, and it's actually looking sort of from the west or south. You see north, southwest. You can see on the left side there's a 4-story classroom wing and administrative wing. The white portion you see in front of you is art studios, the cafeterias behind that, the music rooms behind that. So we wanted to show you what the initial schematic design of the building looked like, but also some of the floor plans. And I know this image is kind of small to see there. We also have handouts, so if you haven't picked up one, they're on the table, and you can look at that. This is what we call the first floor. The buses, the parent drop-off will be on this first floor. The blue portion you see in the lower left-hand corner is basically the administrative space. So we expect parents to drop off there. They could come in to the admin space, talk to people if necessary. The light blue portion about in the center is the cafeteria. Art rooms are over there, music rooms. There's a black box theater at the top. As opposed to having a large auditorium, we'll have what they call a black box theater that seats about 200. And that could be shared with the high school, and the high school auditorium shared with the middle school. So it provides us another means for the kids to put on their performances. This is looking from the other side. This is more from the Groton Long Point Road side, if you will. And that's where the bus drop-off will be. The bus drop-off will be basically on the second floor. The kids will come in the front where you see the lettering that says Groton Middle School. That's certainly not the name that's been selected yet because there isn't one, but the kids will be able to come into that area and they'll walk right into the first educational floor. And so what you see on the top left is the gymnasium, those educational places. On the right, the dark kind of maroon box is the library, and to the right of that is other educational spaces. What you see in the bottom is the classroom wings. There'll be 9 classrooms plus 3 science rooms on the floors. One floor will only have 2 science rooms, but those floors will be identical from one to another. So from the bus drop-off, then the kids come into the first floor. They depending on the grade alignment, they may have to go up 2 floors to their classroom, but they're all those floors are all identical. So we have something kind of interesting to be able to show you. We have a little animation that was provided by the architect. That's probably the biggest improvement in school design that we've seen from what we did in 2005, 6, 7, and 8. So this is what they call a BIM or a Revit model. It's a 3D model that allows for 3D design of the building, makes things more efficient, easier to design. So as you go around, you can see it. Right now you're looking at a stair tower. On the left is the gymnasium as we come around. The bus entry is going to be coming around into view there, plus we'll have the music room in there, the black box theater, and as we go around, you'll be able to see from the lower side, from the western side, where the parent drop-off area is, and that south entry with the administrative spaces. So it's a pretty handsome building. We're still working on finishes and those sorts of things. We're in the process of doing the schematic design estimate to get that looked at to make sure we're on budget and on time. So our next steps basically is we're looking at the middle school is in a semi-holding pattern because we need to find out what's going on with the land decision or the conversion. Like I said, we're hiring a construction manager for Cutler and West Side. That'll be coming up next. The next thing for the elementary schools then is to study the renovation replacement options. We have additional town consultants, as I mentioned, that we're bringing on. And we need to conduct environmental assessments on the two existing, or actually on all three sites. In addition to the environmental assessments, we'll have to do some hazardous material investigation on the two existing middle schools and see where that goes. So there's quite a bit of work. We're just, we've broken the skin and we're getting into the game, but we still got a ways to go. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I brought Jack, of course, because he can answer some of the more technical stuff that I may not be able to.
Representative Mello Miller?
What do you define as a diversity school?
That's probably more appropriate for the superintendent to answer.
A diversity school is a school that is especially financed by the state at 80% reimbursement rate for a school that is to replace another school that has had racial imbalances, and the town has had to try to address those racial imbalances over a period of years and has in fact failed. So with the case of Colchester School, it has been redistricted 2 times, and most recently, when it was out of racial balance, we applied for the diversity school status. That's what gave us the 80%.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Just so I heard that right, so it's to replace racial imbalance, the racial imbalance that has failed. So do you have to have some kind of, what would be considered racial balance?
School which is 25% more one race than the average of the district. So the average of the district is 43% children of color. So if a school is 25% more than that or 25% less than that, it's out of racial balance.
So does that mean you have to get in balance before you qualify for the grant? Is that the idea?
No,
Or
the
maybe I'm
grant
misunderstanding.
the grant provides a building that through magnet choice program would achieve racial balance.
Okay, so the idea is they give you 80% reimbursement rate and then you put it in balance, but it's not required before? Sorry if I'm misunderstanding.
In order to qualify for the 80%, you have to build a school that achieves racial balance. So you of course you can't achieve it before you build it, but when you build it, the other component besides the 80% is that it has to be a choice school, like Catherine Kolnowski. Catherine Kolnowski is a perfect example of a school that was built for the purpose of achieving racial balance. And right now, 36% of the children who attend Catherine Kolnowski are not neighborhood kids. And that school is in racial balance, but not through redistricting.
Okay, and I'm sorry, this may be a strange question, but so once you are part of a diversity school, is there like a checkup from the state? Like, do they come back and say, hey, are you still
Every year.
honoring that? It's every year?
Yeah, well, they check every school every year,
Okay.
yes.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry. Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. What's a movement studio?
It's another exercise space that was requested by the Board of Education as part of their educational program. It was in the educational specs. When we design a school, the Board of Education puts together educational specifications. Those get reviewed, they get probably beat up pretty well as people go back and forth over them. You know, there was committees from the community that looked at those spaces. And then we take those things and we put those requirements into areas or spaces. And that was one of the ones that was required for alternate physical education. It could be used, for example, for some theatrical dance stuff. It could be used for, so what we're providing is flexibility for the Board of Education as things may change over time. Because as you see by the current schools, they don't meet current educational standards, and it's difficult to teach in today's way in those particular buildings.
So it's basically a space that you're anticipating doing something with at some point.
Oh, sure. Every day. It will be essentially a physical education space.
Different
Physical
from,
education class could be dance, but nevertheless, it would be a physical education space.
okay. And the black box theater? I mean, do you have, is there an auditorium?
No. The auditorium
So
was
is there any place there that the student body can gather for?
in the cafeteria, either the cafeteria or the gymnasium are the two biggest spaces. The auditorium, you can only provide an auditorium for half of the student body anyway. Typically for middle schools, it's not something that's allowed. You can go and support it, but through the review of the educational specifications, it was determined the space could be better used. So this black box theater can be used as a performance space. If anybody happened to see Jesus Christ Superstar on TV, that's kind of an example of a black box kind of theater arrangement. So they can do performances in there. They can get some of the student body together on various sized presentations. But then that could be also used by the high school, and the bigger events can be used, can go over to the high school and go in that auditorium, which would ease the requirements on both those buildings for that use.
Because that's a pretty small space. So whatever the high school would be doing there would have to be a pretty small scale.
Well, a couple hundred kids, a couple hundred could sit in there. So, you know, all our performances don't fill the auditorium, for example. There's a whole lot of seats in that auditorium.
Personally, I hope to see something on the exterior. I mean, in my opinion, for what it's worth, it kind of looks like an apartment complex coupled with green airport. I was hoping to have something that a little more reflected the architecture of the history of the area, or something that would, you know, that wouldn't be, you know, looking, you know, yeah.
Well,
But anyway, that's my opinion.
well, and actually the colors for the outside are not selected yet. So the white areas you see are probably ground face or split face concrete block. We've seen them at other schools, other locations, where there's a combination of various colors that could match the scenery that you have there. The brick is pretty much traditional for the schools we have in this area. So those selections are going to be made by the Permanent School Building Committee, pretty
I
much.
was hoping for something a little less industrial looking. And I guess my last question is, were we always planning on putting 600 kids at Cutler?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't recall it was going to be that many. 600 kids is a big elementary school.
It is a little bit bigger. Our bigger ones right now are about 425, but the 600 child elementary school will allow us to do some consolidation, which we, of course, the plan called for 3 elementary schools to go to 2. So that consolidation will allow us to operate a little more efficiently. But
Thank
you're
you.
right, it's a little bit bigger.
Thank you very much.
Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a quick question. With all of the things that are going on as far as safety in the school is concerned, could either one of you discuss like the entrances and, you know, a little bit more detail so that we could all have some ideas to the safety of the school?
That's certainly high on the priority list of the design. I mean, the architects we have are well into that. The superintendent has a safety team that will look at it. We've had the police department, they will be involved in it. We're looking, for example, at the glass. There'll be the entryway. How is the entryway made? Is it just a vestibule? Do you have to check in and at a desk and then go through the inner door to the vestibule? So those things are considered. During the day, I expect the doors will be pretty much locked on the building. So there are things in place, or there will be, as we go through the design to look at those things.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you for coming out tonight and presenting us with this slideshow. My questions, I guess, are directly linked to attending the building committee meetings where they discussed the design and getting down to how we were going to have the black box and how everything was going to fit together. I know towards the end we started cutting a lot of the square footage out, and I know there was a major concern about the band room, because since we are, saying we're an arts and humanities middle school, magnet school, and once we kind of merge, we'll have the pathways. I'm curious because when we looked at our numbers, our current numbers of our band students at both of the middle schools, all of our children were not going to be able to come together as one band in this building. So that was a concern to me, considering we're supposed to be improving our facilities, and I felt like our arts and all those different types of areas should be, able to withstand the amount of band students. So my first question is, what is our final square footage of this building? My next additional question to that is how many students is the capacity for this building? Since with all the military people moving in and we're hoping for growth, and with the TIF and economic development hopefully taking off, I want to make sure this building can withstand the fluctuation in the incoming students. Also the grounds. Currently our freshman baseball team practices at and plays games at Cutler Middle School, which is a very low standard field, and it needs actually needs some repairs. It's kind of embarrassing to have our freshman team that try out and make the team actually play at Cutler. So another big pull here is, what is our grounds going to look like? I know I went out to Darien and they had turf and all this other stuff, so I'm really hoping that this middle school is going to have the facilities that Groton has needed for, I would say, I can speak since I was in school in '98. So to reiterate, also there was parents at that meeting, including myself, that were concerned that their students had to go to Fitch High School to drag all of their equipment over there to perform, also deal with the fluctuating schedule of the high school. So I feel like we kind of didn't really meet a lot of the gaps and expectations of the community with this. It's exciting to have a new building, but I do feel that there's some things that are lacking. So once again, what is the square footage? How many students will this fit? And what are the grounds going to look like?
Okay. First, with the square footage, we're allowed a certain amount of square foot per student. Our allowance is 155,000 square feet. So that's what the interior of the building will be. Other than that, in the past, you could extend that square footage if the town paid for it. Right now, there's changes in the school construction grant program that sometimes don't allow things that we were seeing in the past, because the rules are kind of changing on a daily basis. So the square footage that we're allowed to build is for maximum reimbursement is 155,000 square feet. The issues on the fields, we have two large fields. One's 225 by 360 feet. That's intended to be an all-purpose field. We're looking at that now. We're looking at the budget, the cost estimate to see how that goes. There's a smaller field next to it that's, I think it's 220 feet by 300 feet. I think it's a smaller field. The only ball field per se on there is a softball field on there, and that's all we could get on the site in the allowable cost. Right now, we're looking at the site costs, and as you could expect, they're pretty high because we're going to be building into the bank. It'll be 1 story below the bank. Basically, the cafeteria will be on the low level, which is when you saw the first level coming in. That level is actually 16 feet below the next floor. So that is built into the bank. We're also looking at, for example, trying to balance the site. So the less material you have to haul away, the less money you have to expend on the site. You had, what was your other question?
How many can this building actually
Okay,
hold?
the building's designed for 947. That was the maximum we see as enrollment over the next several years, and it's actually dropping off from that right now. But it is, the capacity could handle, 10 to 15% more students if you really pack the building. So there is room for expansion. There's also, in the design, there's room for adding additional classrooms on the end of the classroom wing if that should happen, and we have a very large influx of students. But what we're seeing right now is, and what we've seen since the last school program, is decline in enrollment. It went from 6,000, we're down to 5,000 or less now, and it's continuing to drop off. So we're mindful of those potential increases, and we're looking at ways that if we have to do something, we can.
And the square footage of the band room, how many students can actually participate in that band room to practice?
I don't remember what the square
Well,
footage is.
you're right that the entire band, I think we have like 200, potentially when we combine the bands, but 220 students. If you look at the way we designed it, the band could always get together in the cafeteria. I can't really see. Is that purple room? Is that the band room?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Right.
so you see the way they decided, the purple room with the light blue room there. The band room, that wall will be openable, and so the entire band could play in that space. So there will be times when the whole band can get together. But in terms of the actual instruction, it will be in the band room per grade.
Right, but I know currently they get the whole band together
Yes,
to be able
that's
to
right.
perform.
That's right.
So with that moving forward, and we're thinking about the new construction of these elementary schools, I hope that we take into account ball fields that we're lacking in the town for our students, maybe at the Cutler and West Side, that we consider, what we're lacking at the middle school and maybe how we can incorporate that at our new elementary schools. And with that, with new construction versus old construction, I hope that we consider looking at all the hazardous materials, the piping that's outdated with lead and all these other breaches with water in our district that we have going on around here, and all the asbestos and everything else that we constantly have to keep removing that cost us tons of money, that we're also consider and weigh those costs and take those in consideration. And if we're going to renovate, that we are removing all hazardous materials out of our schools.
Well, and that's the charge, is to remove those. So new construction is obviously easier because you don't have to deal with those. You do if you demolish the building, take it away. So we're hoping that we would be able to build new just to avoid some of those, and we can pack up all the hazardous material, take it away. Because once we go into a school and identify it, then we have to do something about it. So we got to be careful on when we look at those things and when we identify those. I know the schools have been very proactive in replacing asbestos-containing floor tile and those sorts of things. But when, for example, when we did the high school, we found things that we never would have expected to find. So there is that level of risk when you renovate as new.
Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have on good authority that Clinton, a few years ago, was going to build a new school, and they were going to get funds from the state for that. They started building their school. I haven't researched this, it's just hearsay, but it got me to thinking. So they started building their school, and then the state said, sorry, we have no money, so they were on the hook for the money. How can we guarantee that we are going to get the money that the state says, since it's a few years later and they're in a worse state than they were before?
You heard anything about the Clinton school, Jack? Or you might want to.
Oh, you have to go on a
You have to come over and grab the mic here.
I'm not aware of the Clinton situation. There are times when a town will begin to design the project while they're waiting for their grant commitment from the state. And it could be a situation where they were cut that particular year. There was, I think back in 2015, there were 10 projects statewide. One of my other clients had one of them that was deferred from action that year and pushed forward into the following legislative session. If that, to use my own client's experience, if they had started the project basically at their risk during grant year and then got deferred, then they might have been in a position where they had to stop because there was no cash flow from the state. That's possible that Clinton was in that situation. I'm not familiar with their specifics. In our case, however, we have grant commitment letters from the state that obligates them to support the projects at the dollar values approved by the legislature and at the reimbursement rates for the eligible costs that were stated in those grants. So at this point, they've put their signature on the bottom line. We have to follow a very rigorous process with them as far as continual review of the documents as they're developed. Prior question about how large is the school, Rick said we have 155 that we're allowed to build. The original ed spec, I believe, the hard numbers there were north of 180,000 square feet. That is the reality. The state is saying, in essence, the state has traditionally said, build what you want, but this is as much as we will pay for. At present, the state is saying, here is your allowance, stay within that allowance, and they're not even entertaining the conversations, as Rick noted, about, I can have this much, but I'll pay for the extra. So they're taking a much harder line on the size of the schools. And I understand that there are expectations that may not be fully met in the final product based on the size of rooms, the amount of band students in one rehearsal at one time. But realistically speaking, you're fortunate to have applied for your grants when you did, because grants that were followed just this year will have to abide by a new space standard that would have cost us, I think the number was 32 or 33,000 square feet.
30,000 square feet.
We would add 33,000 square feet less that we were allowed to build under the state's revised space standard. So this is the least worst solution based on where the state has gone. With the grant commitments that we have on file, we have a hard dollar amount, we have a percentage of reimbursement that is committed to, and once those letters have come out, I'm not aware of any project in the state that has ever had the monies pulled out from under them, as long as they followed the process.
Thank you.
And that's part of our responsibility as we go through this project. We have to make sure we hire the architects, we hire the construction manager, we hire any other consultants that we need in the appropriate manner so we can ensure we're eligible for reimbursement. That's a big thing. On the school room sizes and those sorts of things, the Board of Education had a committee. It included the two principals from the existing middle schools and other educators, plus the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, and they sat with the architects and a person from the architect community that was very experienced in putting those spaces together. And it was not, they had to make some hard decisions. It wasn't very easy saying we can give you 40,000 square feet for a band room, but then what happens to the rest of the classrooms? So yes, there were some compromises probably made, but there were difficult decisions that the Board of Education had to make to bring, to meet the educational specs as they were spelled out and provide the program that was anticipated. So it's not an easy thing like buying a house or whatever. You have a lot of say when you're going to buy a house, but not so much with the state.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Is there any other questions? If not, Mr. Burt, are you done with your report? Okay. Thank you. Oh, I see Representative Massett.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It's a question for the town manager. Is it possible for you to give us an update on COG, Council of Governments, and what's going on? It's just we haven't had one in a long time, and I would like to know what's going on.
Unfortunately, I missed the last one. The latest thing that I've been involved with there is they're doing a study for cost sharing. The city has been involved, the town's been involved, looking at HR, IT services, Parks and Rec was represented, finance, and a variety of other things, Public Works, trying to see if there's any cost savings. So that study's out now, and they're forming, they've tried to find a master committee to try to tackle it. They didn't get enough volunteers, but now they're going to look piece by piece and just see, where does it work out for different communities to work together and do some cost sharing. And I'm excited about that, and we'll see if it goes anywhere. So, and I will now that I'm aware of the interest, I will, after every meeting, come back and I'll bring some information back here. Thank you.
Yeah, any more questions for Mr. Burt? Representative Bordelon?
Last thing. One of the things after receiving the TIF folder that was handed out about a month and a half ago, I know we didn't have a meeting last month, and after finally getting the opportunity to review it, one of the things I thought was missing, I thought it was nicely done, really colorful, I like all the graphics. One of the additions, I think, that's a big part of our TIF here and getting people to move into our area is our school system. And I thought a trifold or at least a packet or portfolio of some sort explaining the direction of our district, what we're doing, these projected new buildings, I think would be a nice asset to that folder.
No, I agree. I'll talk with John Reiner about it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great idea. Seeing no more hands in the air, let's turn to report on economic development, if there is one.
They're
No?
not here tonight.
Okay. Can we, does Dr. Grenier, do you have a report for the schools? I do. Okay, you're on.
Well, good evening. Let me start with the budget. Did anyone not get a handout? Because I have some extras there over on the table there. If you didn't get a handout for me, it should have a chart on the back. Does anyone not have it? Because I'm going to refer to the chart in a moment. Okay. So the budget, since the last time I was here, the Board of Education approved a budget which had a 2.4% increase. That was done on the 26th of February. That budget was forwarded to the Town Council. The Town Council met this Monday, last Monday, April 9th, and approved a budget that reflected the minimum budget requirement, which is to say the same budget that we have this year, $76,468,239. I can say that number pretty quickly because it's the third year I'm saying that number. So we will have a zero for next year, well, unless this august body puts a bunch of money into it, it will be the same budget as we've had for the last 2 years. The personnel chart that I wanted to have you take a look at on the back of this sheet, there's a yellow line and there's a sort of a light green line. Do you have one of these? No. Anybody else not have a chart? Oh, there. So there has been a bit of understandable confusion about the. Thank you, Betsy. A bit of understandable confusion about the personnel that the school district has, and it's frankly it's our own making. If you go back to the budget book of FY11, you would see in the budget book, that is to say in the far right-hand column, in yellow, you would see 662.8 personnel, 459 teachers, 39.8 administrators, and so forth and so on. And I couldn't figure out, because I knew there were more personnel than that, where those personnel were, and we did a person-by-person analysis, and what we realized was we have two types of paraprofessionals. Paraprofessionals called paraprofessionals 1, they're more senior, and we have paraprofessionals 2, far more. Most of the paraprofessionals we currently have are paraprofessionals 2, but we had 143 of those paraprofessionals in FY11. We had 27 bus aides, which again was not counted, they were left out of the FTE count. and we had 2 security staff members at the high school. So if you add those 172 to the 662.8, you come out with 834, which is the accurate count. Those were the actual folks that we had. And then if you go across that green column to the left, you'll see in FY12 we cut down primarily on the number of paraprofessionals down to 776, then 770, and so forth. And then it went to a low in FY15, and then FY16. I was here during those years, and I know for a fact that the paraprofessional count was well underfunded. And what happened was they would reduce the number of paras in the spring because children were leaving the district. But once September rolled around, of course, we needed those paraprofessionals. So as you can see, the current staffing is almost exactly the same. The big changes here are we went from 39.8 administrators to 31, and we went from 459 teachers. This includes the 441.7. It includes tutors that we have, because that's the way they're listed in the chart of accounts. I know for a fact, because I just reviewed it today, we actually have 423 certified teachers. We had last year, if you look at the budget book, 18 more teachers than that, but that's a reflection of the number of teachers we reduced because of the closure of Pleasant Valley School. So I'd be happy to answer questions about this chart, but it was a reasonable misunderstanding that actually the mayor asked me why we would have 822 staff members when in fact it would appear if you go up to your yellow line we had 662. Again, as I said, that was reported in the budget book. And we will have a more comprehensive budget book, actually thanks to some advice from some former board members, and actually Representative Bordelon came to a meeting. So we think we'll have a far more comprehensive book next year. And it will go back to some books that my friend Representative Washington was responsible for. We got away from it for a while, but I think we're going to go back to the future next year. But I'd be happy to answer any of your questions about this, or I'll just keep on going.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are you done?
Yeah. No, well, I'm not done with my whole report,
No, keep going
but I'm
then.
done with the chart.
No, keep going.
The middle school, we are turning the middle schools, both middle schools, into magnet schools, so that any current 5th, 6th, or 7th grader is eligible to go to either of the middle schools. So what happened was we had a parent meeting in March, in early March, where we both at West Side, which is going to be our STEM magnet, and Cutler, which is our Arts and Humanities magnet, and we explained the nature of those programs, plus the commonality, which is really, frankly, it's much more. It's the same literacy, same math, same science, but there are magnet themes. But just yesterday, we had the lottery, and several, it's sort of was a good coincidence. The current 5th grade class that would normally go to Cutler was 36 students lower than the number of students that 5th graders that are slated to go to West Side. So in fact, we were able to facilitate all the requests of the Cutler students. About 18 5th graders are not going to go to Cutler next year. They're going to go to West Side STEM. And I think we pulled 48 names. 48 students from Cutler are in fact going to go to West Side, which actually balances the two classes, which is really terrific. It'd be about 170 children in both schools. The other nice thing about the lottery was that we pulled about a quarter of the names were for highly mobile students. primarily military children. So of the first 10 names, say, 2 of them would have been for an unnamed highly mobile student, and those names will be pulled in August when the military kids get here. Well, and the other people who move in. Impact aid, I had a meeting with Representative Courtney. There's a proposal to provide the parents of military dependents essentially a voucher that the children can use to go to private schools. The money for the voucher would come out of our impact aid. So the about $3.5 million a year that the town receives for impact aid would be reduced. And so I wrote a letter to the congressman, which is being forwarded to the administration. It could have a severe impact on the revenues for this town. And Representative Courtney understood that, and he has consistently supported us with our impact aid. And lastly, I was just going to say, I didn't realize we had a really comprehensive presentation tonight. We are, in fact, moving ahead from the program perspective. This week, we started a committee, which we will be expanding after the April vacation, to pick the 2 themes for the 2 magnet schools. So, as Representative Mello Miller asked me before, one of the schools has to be, the diversity school must be a themed magnet. So the school essentially that will be at the Cutler site will be a themed magnet. That's why we're getting 80%, thank God. And then the other school will also have a themed magnet. And we don't know what the themes are going to be quite yet. But the architects are, well, we haven't hired them yet, but the idea is we need to tell them what the themes are going to be. We need to develop the themes so that we can design buildings appropriate to those themes. And now I'm finished.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Grenier. I had a question about your first bullet and the last sentence in it, which says the reduction of the budget may be achieved through the use of Board of Ed insurance reserve account.
Yes.
So it was a fairly large cut that the town council made the other night, and I just was wondering about that verb, may. What's going to happen with this cut? Can it be remedied this way? The may makes me a little,
right.
I'm just curious if you could elaborate on that.
Sure. In order to get to the minimum budget, the board will have to cut $1.8 million. And so when we confronted that chore, that possibility, actually Mr. Burt and I and the finance director got together and tried to come up with some palatable ways that we could cut $1.8 million. So we came up with 3. And I'll get to the may in a minute. The first one is when the board funds its health insurance account, it's about a $14 million program. The board puts in about $10 million in round figures. The employees pay about $2 million, and the retired employees pay about $2 million. So there's your $14 million. And then we are self-insured, so we pay the claims. When there's money left over, if there is money left over, the first thing is you have to have a corridor funding, sort of a rainy day fund for the health insurance of 25%. So we have the 14 million plus we have the 3.5 million. If there's any money left over after that, it goes into the board's reserve, health insurance reserve. And we believe this year well, we're trying to really verify all this, but we believe that the health insurance reserve is about $2.7 million. So we could, in essence, underfund. We know we need $10.5 million next year for our health insurance. But if the board only put $9.5 million in there, it could take $1 million from the health insurance reserve. That was the first bit. The second part was when we looked at our liability for retired employees. Their claims were coming in, the expected claims were coming in at about $780,000. The board thought it would be wise to put in another about $300,000 because that's what the actuarial liability was. So we thought this is not a great year to fully fund the actuarial liability, so we deducted $300,000 from that. And then the board has a fund different from the federal education department impact aid. We have Department of Defense impact aid, and that money comes right to the board. So the thought was the board could in essence balance the budget that way. The may is that I am not the Board of Education, and the board, of course, would have to make that decision. So hypothetically, the board could cut other things. They certainly don't have to take my recommendation.
Okay.
But I don't know how they get $1.8 million. So, you know, I think and there were a couple, actually, a few other things that could have been cut. So if we, it depends on our health insurance experience. That's how that number grows to be 2.7. If our experience has been very good this year, so if the experience continues to be really good, and there's more in the health insurance reserve, they could take more out of the health insurance reserve and still achieve a balance. The one thing that you have to be leery of is if you take $1 million next year, I mean this year, next year you're starting $1 million in the hole because you got to pay back that $1 million. So next year, before we buy a pencil, we're $1 million in the hole because we know we needed the $1 million. Unless health insurance costs go way down in this country, which I see no such trend.
Thank you very much. Are there
You're
any
welcome.
other questions? Representative McDermott, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mike, I have a question on the number of teachers and aides and paraprofessionals we have. We have about how many kids in the school system now? About 4,500, 5,000
Yeah,
somewhere?
about 43 resident, 5,000 total for tuition.
If you take the number of teachers and add in the aides and so forth, that's a pretty favorable ratio, I would say. That's 400.
It's actually, Representative Whitney asked an astute question the other day, and I researched it, but only for 10 hours. And the ratio of students to teachers has been 10-to-1 for about the last 15 years. In other words, as the population has gone down, the staff has gone down.
Right. No, that was not my question.
Oh.
My question was how do we compare with other towns in the area, for instance? Not Greenwich necessarily, but like Stonington or Norwich or something like that.
I wouldn't want to guess. Although I was a superintendent of Ledyard for 11 years, so I can
take Ledyard. That's okay.
Yeah, it's very similar. Very similar.
So that's typical across the state, then, probably.
Yeah, and I'll direct your attention to one other thing. If you look below the green line, you'll notice that our population in FY15, there were, in terms of regular education students, there were 3,700. Then it went down to 36 and 35 and 34. Mm-hmm. But look at what's happened to the special education population. It went from 608 to 648. Yeah. I was talking to somebody in our a program that deals with fairly severe children on the autism spectrum, and because I was trying to figure all this out, and the woman said that she started, I think it was 10 years ago, with 2 children, and we now have 40. The expansion of children with disabilities, medically fragile children included, has really been significant. So I think you see that in all districts, yes.
What is the percentage that we spend out of our budget for special
about 22,
education?
About 22%. That's for sure. I know that's nationwide.
And that's been pretty steady over many years.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Grenier, how many kids are we educating, non-Navy kids that are living in base housing right now? And did Congressman Courtney say anything about providing funding for those kids?
The answer is there are 146 children this year who are civilians, Balfour Beatty, and he has consistently supported our efforts to try to get fair funding. The problem with civilians, it's a pretty complicated chart, but in round figures, for every military-dependent child who lives in Balfour Beatty, the town gets a reimbursement of $3,500. For every civilian, we get $185. So if you multiply that differential, which is about $3,200, if my math is right, by 146, you get to a pretty significant number, more than $500,000. So that's really problematic, and I know there have been town council delegations that have gone down to Washington. I don't want to be pessimistic about it, but it's a big federal program. I think it's about a $1.2 billion program, but because it provides funding for children who live on Native American reservations. Ledyard gets almost all of its money for the casino children, the people who live or work on the reservation. So we get, for the military children, we do actually have some folks who work on the casino, and we get impact aid for them. We get impact aid for people who work at EB. Thank you. We get anyone who lives or works on federal property. But you're right, the civilian thing, Balfour Beatty has been open to civilians, and it was negligible, one or two children at first. Now it's pretty significant, and that trend is hurting us a great deal.
Thank you. Representative Whitehouse.
Actually, a couple questions about the Balfour Beatty thing. What's our cost per student to educate them?
About 15,000.
Okay, and we're getting 3,500
for a military dependent.
And much less.
Right.
And Balfour Beatty is basically market rate housing that does not pay any property tax?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's your frustration I share.
Representative Whitney.
Thanks. I have a question about the middle school class size for next year. So I think you said for the incoming 6th grade, you're thinking that's going to be 170 at West Side and 170 at Cutler. And then this year, I think according to the numbers, it's 155 at Cutler and 174 at West Side. I'm looking at the budget book.
Yeah.
And so what I'm wondering, that looks like it's about 10% class size increase in Cutler. But what I don't know is how the class size is compared between the middle schools right now, and if that's going to be balanced, the class size.
Well, we're trying to use the lottery to do exactly that. I know there were several children, a few. The current 6th graders and the current 7th graders were less interested in changing schools, understandably so, because they were already in a middle school. 5th graders were far more open. So we had about 93 children chose to enter the lottery to move. Less so. So we have more children who are going to West Side in the effort to do exactly what you're hoping. I think the current 7th grade. I think it's the current 8th grade is kind of small, but we are doing, by virtue of the lottery, we are trying to balance, literally have them even.
I realize I didn't articulate that well. What I'm wondering is, for the elementary school, we know for each school in the budget you can see how many students are in a classroom, like 18 or 24. Right. And at the Education Committee for RTM, we got some information about the high school, but sort of missing for the middle school. And I guess I'm wondering, are these class sizes of 18 or 19 in both middle schools
Yes.
typically?
Yes.
And so now is Cutler going to have, an appreciably larger?
No, we are controlling for that. Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't make that clear. In both cases, it's about 20. It could be 19 to 21, but no great difference.
Representative Bordelon?
I just wanted to acknowledge that I did meet with Dr. Grenier, and it was an extremely positive meeting with the other people in attendance, and I'm really excited to see the budget book next year. After seeing it this year, I was really excited to see some of the old budget books and having things like the back page, which defined every grant, what they're used for, how much each grant was the amount was, and how they were going to be using that grant. That's just one of the examples that stood out to me, and a bunch of other things. So I just wanted to thank him for that, and I look forward to seeing a much more detailed budget book moving forward next year. Also, I spoke with the assistant superintendent as well and the guidance counselor at Fitch. One of the other things that was on the table was supporting 504 students at the high school, and I'm currently told as of next year that they are going to be starting a 504 resource room for students to go into during their CTL period. So these are all positive things. One of the negatives, I guess, or not negative, but the special ed number moving up. One of the other concerns that I've heard in the district is not every child that is special ed has a physical disability. Some child could have a learning disability, and it could be something as simple like being behind on math and having ADD or reading. So I think the more that we support and fund our remedial programs here and get the kids capable of learning up to grade level, we could see this number drop, and that's why I'm in support of remedial support. The other big thing, like I said before, I don't know if this is a town manager issue or Board of Ed, but the baseball field at Cutler, it's kind of embarrassing for a high school field. If somebody could get down there and surface it and put some seed down or something, I don't even know where to begin. But it'd be really nice to see that Cutler field, since that's all we have. And when you look at other districts and what fields they get to use, it's kind of sad. I know that we can't use the Washington Park fields because those are designated for other things like the Yukon Avery Point, which is a great ball field, but it would really be nice if we can put some money into that. And another big hope, and people that have contacted me have stated concerns about the football field. It needs to be resurfaced, it dips down. It is also a major possibility for injuries to occur. So we really need to take care of what we currently do have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Well, thank you, Dr. Grenier. We're going to move on
You're welcome.
with our agenda.
Okay, see.
So the next item are liaison reports. Representative Whitehouse, do you have a liaison report?
So I'm the liaison to the Economic Development Commission. And just briefly, wanted to briefly touch on what the Economic Development Commission does, for those who don't know. So they're connected with the Office of Development and Planning, is that the acronym? See, I'm a great expert. But basically what their job is to build the town's economic base, which hopefully increases the tax base and the grand list, so that the RTM has more money to spend for town services without having to raise taxes, which is a good thing. One thing they're working on right now is the commissioners are doing outreach to businesses directly to find out from them what their issues are. Because the goal is to make Groton a more business-friendly town, so that when people consider developing a business somewhere, they will choose Groton instead of someplace that isn't Groton. Another thing they're doing a lot of is the development of the town branding. Many of you may have seen the new town logo. There's actually, and if you haven't seen it, they actually have a flag down at the town hall annex with the new town logo on it. It's beautiful. And basically providing materials, so again, when a business is considering where to locate to, there will be resources, brochures, website. If you haven't seen Explore More Groton, there's exploremoregroton.com is the new website, which has a lot of great information and really makes us look good, which is important when you're trying to develop the town. At the next meeting, the commission's actually doing a tour of various sites they're working on development for. So I should have more well, actually, I probably won't have too much to talk about next month because we'll be a little busy. But the month after that, I might talk a bit more about what's happening with that. So, thank you.
Representative Kwiatkowski?
The Town Council had 10 meetings since our last RTM meeting on February 4th. Here are a few highlights. On February 20th, there was a joint Town Council and City Council meeting. The purpose of the meeting was for the Town and City Councils to communicate and improve their relationship. These meetings will be held quarterly. There was a presentation and overview of bonds. There was a TIF, tax incremental financing presentation. Regarding the deposition of empty schools, it was reported that the town is actively marketing Mystic Community Center, Mystic Educational Center, sorry. Pleasant Valley and Colonel Ledyard schools can be marketed once they are turned over to the town, and marketing William Seeley is more complex due to having to work with an abutting property owner. At the February 27th meeting, there was a public hearing for the proposed tax incremental financing plan. 9 residents commented in favor of it, and there was also a public hearing for the proposed Merritt property conversion. 17 residents commented in favor of it, and 9 commented against. At the February 27th Town Council meeting, the Town Council voted to postpone the vote on the Merritt property, and they appointed the town attorney, Sussman and Shapiro. And the Town Council authorized the town manager to sign an MOU for the processing of land records, as well as to enter into a contract for a grant for the preservation of documents. They also approved the 2018 Shannecossett golf course rates. Okay. At the March 6th Town Council meeting, nothing to report there. Okay. At the Town Council meeting, they passed a resolution authorizing the cancellation of the Thomas Road Bikeway project due to the high cost. The road will be widened instead. They introduced the illicit storm water discharge ordinance, and they approved the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. They also approved a resolution regarding the joint land use study, and they approved the supplemental appropriation of $160,121 for the Crystal Lake Road project, which we are voting on tonight. They authorized the town manager to apply for 2 grants for human services, and they adopted the tax incremental financing policy. They also authorized the town manager to apply for a transit administrative grant to provide funds for vehicle replacement of the 12-passenger van at the senior center. At the March 27th meeting, they approved general obligation bonds to be sold for road maintenance in the amount of $6,690,000, and they also approved zeroing out the bond authorization for the additions and renovations to the senior center, as well as for the Thames Street rehabilitation project. At the March 27th meeting, that was the special meeting, this is the cow, there was a presentation by the town's actuary. It was the consensus of the town to terminate the lease agreement and the security monitoring system agreement at the Colonel Ledyard School site, and sent to resolution where the town council added Thomas Road to the road reconstruction projects for 2018. $70,000 was approved for a town-city highway analysis, with each paying $35,000, which will be coming to us. The town approved the library senior center display sign, which will be coming to us. And they adopted the ordinance amending various ordinance to increase fines, which also will be coming to us. At the special meeting on March 28th, there was a presentation, this was a public hearing. On March 28th, there was a public hearing on the Board of Ed budget. There was a presentation by the town manager, Board of Ed chair, and superintendent regarding the 2019 budget. There were approximately 25 speakers. On April 3rd, the town council had a public hearing regarding the illicit stormwater discharge. No one spoke. At the regular meeting, the Town Council approved a resolution terminating the lease with the City of Groton for the Colonel Ledger School site. They adopted their rules for the 31st Town Council. They adopted the ordinance amending various ordinances to increase fine, which is coming to the RTM, like I said previously. There were questions regarding the general penalties as well as the list of the streets included, so you may want to research that when you get it. They approved a resolution authorizing a lease of Town Hall Annex office space to the Pequannock Bridge Fire District, and they approved a resolution accepting year 6 reports for the road maintenance and rehabilitation program. They also approved a resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation of $20,000 from the Capital Reserve Fund's fund balance for a library sign, which is coming to the RTM. Also, the name of the new community center, they also approved the name of the new community center as Groton Community Center, with the name Fitch to remain on the front of the building. They authorized the town manager to apply for a $5,000 Pfizer grant for the senior center and approved the $35,000 for the town city highway analysis, which will be coming to the RTM. Last, at this meeting, they approved the new job description for the Director of Human Resources Assistant Town Manager. Last night, at the April 10th meeting, they discussed the budget with 2 fire districts, and they approved the fiscal year 2018 fourth quarter transfers totaling $29,800 for 3 departments: legislative policy, town clerk, and executive management, and this will be referred to the RTM. They went into executive session regarding the Merritt property conversion, and when they came out, they approved the addition of 35 acres from the King property to the Boulder Heights property for the purposes of construction of the middle school property on the Merritt property. Yeah, and this will also be referred to the RTM. Last, a referral was made to establish a policy regarding how pilot money is distributed. Thank you.
I want to really thank you, Representative Kachowski, because that represents a huge amount of work. And I know that Representative Kachowski would love to have another person as a liaison, so if there are any interested parties in that position, see me, and then you can kind of work together on that. Thank you so much. Representative Bordelon, I bet you have a lot too.
I was just going to say, I hope I'm not going after her. Once again, we're also looking for another liaison, correct?
Exactly,
For Board of
exactly.
Ed, because I know some of the other committees meet like once every 2 months or what have you. Town Council and Board of Ed meet every week and sometimes twice a week. I will say that my notes, I try to, with Dr. Grenier coming here every day, the redundancy is probably not needed. I will say that all the notes are online. I encourage everybody to go on and take a look at them. They're up there all the time. I just consolidated what I had from the last meeting as I was out for surgery, and I did make some of the meetings, but I'll go ahead. So I attended the committee as a whole meeting on the 9th. It was at 6 p.m. It was at the Town Annex in room 2. The Board of Ed handed out a template, which is also online. It reviewed the schedule and subjects of the upcoming meetings for April. These will include mid-year math assessments along with special education curriculum development, science task force updates. For the second Monday meeting, they have things on there like technology updates for the third Monday meeting and National Teachers Day, and School Nurse Day discussion for the fourth Monday. And it continues. There was a review of the 2017-2018 school calendar discussion. They discussed which day to make the final day of school. They stated that at the 180-day mark is the legal day to actually end, but with all the snow days this year, they were running into a bit of a decision that was not yet finalized. On the 22nd of June, which would be our legal day to stop according to the state or federal guidelines, that they could meet that 180th day on a Friday, June 22nd, which would make us not having to have our students attend the school on the Monday as their last day, which would be the 181st day. Due to teacher contractual obligations, they would still attend for a half day, possibly for a professional development. Once again, that was not voted on yet, but that was something in the works. That's to decide how they were going to conclude that. They also talked about the FY18 budget. They gave an update. We have a surplus of $242,308. Once again, that was handed out. I can email that to Betsy, or currently that's what they're predicting that will be left over after this school year's budget. And let's see what else I have. They also talked about a DODEA grant proposal, their fourth DODEA grant proposal. They will not know if they are approved for this grant until sometime in August, typically. It's still in, let's see what I have here. So it'd be their fourth DODEA grant, and it would help expand science programs. More details to come because it's in the writing phase. This, and once again, like I said, it should come out hopefully in August. They talked about a little bit about the FY19 budget. Superintendent and Board of Ed discussed pros and cons regarding the current recommendation for the budget adjustments that would bring the FY19 budget percent increase to 0, which would meet the MBR mandated by the state. They also spoke about the Groton 2020 plan. No new information since it's still with the attorney. They also talked about the development of the magnet schools and having some new themes for those 2 elementary schools that are currently middle schools, the Cutler and Westside. They're currently forming committees. They're looking for parents. They're looking for the teachers of the current elementary schools, as well as some Board of Ed members. The ideas and everything are still in development. They adjourned that meeting at 7 o'clock and went into a special meeting, and that special meeting basically was in discussion of a field trip for the Fitch High School Robotics Club. They were pressed for time because I guess they're going to some big national, I forget where they were actually going, what town, Michigan, I believe they were going to. And so they also talked about how they would like to, in future, discuss a way to streamline that system if, different schools need to approve field trips in a more timely manner than waiting a whole month for a meeting. They adjourned that meeting and then went into with the town council at 8 p.m. to discuss budget information.
Thank you so much. Again, a lot of effort. Thank you, Representative Bordelon. Representative Wells, do you have anything from the Golf Advisory Committee? Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, I can report, we had a meeting of the Golf Advisory Committee on April 2nd, and the news, at least for the RTM, is the proposed comfort station that we approved for fiscal year 2017. That's 3 budget books ago. We approved $50,000 for it, and the contracts bids came in over that. So the plan is to do the underground tank portion of the thing as a subcontract that, and do the structure over it in-house. They seem to have the skills to do it. They just don't have the time. It's not going to get done until the fall, once they can stop mowing lawns. From that budget book, the proposed comfort station near the 9th hole will enhance the golfing experience by providing a convenient place to stop on the course. Station will improve pace of play and travel time to the clubhouse, and the faster the games go, the more revenue they make. Our Representative Conley, who was with us at that time, pointed out that this is, she's now serving us in Hartford, pointed out that this is also a women's issue because men can duck behind the nearest tree. They also mentioned that a competing club in Norwich is dropping senior membership, and they expect to pick up more senior golfers at Shenecosset. And when you're dealing with older golfers, there are 2 issues. One is frequency, and the other is urgency. And you know, they do have a new fleet of golf carts. I don't know if that's going to speed the time to the clubhouse, but I would hate to think that some of these women would have to wear astronaut underwear to complete a round of golf. Let's see, what else? They're very fond, they would like to be appreciated on Facebook. And I know many of you probably are looking forward to cutting their budget. You can at least like Shinnecock Golf Course on Facebook. Cheer them up.
Thank you. That was terrific. That was just what we needed. Thank you.
They did discuss a lot of the various discount schemes, Play 20 and so on, but believe me, it's impenetrable.
Okay.
But anyway, thank you very much.
Well, what you captured was terrific, so thank you. Thank you all liaisons. A lot of thanks, because that was a lot of effort. So now we're into the period of looking at committee reports. We're going to start with finance, and Representative Washington, if you want to come up, we can start off with the minutes for the last two finance meetings and then move into the resolutions that were in front of you.
I have an urgency problem, so I'll make this fast. Okay, you know.
We could take a 5-minute break, because let's take a 5-minute break. Is that okay? No, okay.
The Finance Committee met on January 10th, and we had 3 referrals that already came to the RTM, so we're just approving the minutes for that night. The first referral was the supplemental appropriation for contingency resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation to contingency. Where am I? So the first referral was a supplemental appropriation for contingency resolution authorizing something's wrong with that. So that's not worded correctly, is it? No.
I don't have it in front of me, sorry.
Supplemental appropriation for Crystal Lake Road reconstruction?
No, I'm talking about the January 10th. I don't think that's worded right. Hold tight for me.
I have the March 14th minutes.
I know, we had them already.
I think it would be, maybe let's recess for 5 minutes and let Representative Washington get her stuff. Does that seem like a plan? 5 minutes.
This seems so repetitive to me, but it was correct. So the RTM Finance Committee met on January 10th. The first referral was supplemental appropriation for contingency, and that resolution failed in committee. And mind you, we already voted on this way back when. This is just to approve the minutes of that meeting, that's all. Does everybody have the minutes to the meeting? Okay.
Everyone received them.
Okay. The second referral was contingency transfer for wage increases and other items. In the committee, we did not vote on that because the first resolution failed, so that did not go forward in committee. And the third referral was supplemental appropriation for town hall complex, and that passed. And then everything came to the RTM, and all those 3 referrals passed at the regular full RTM meeting. So this is just the minutes for that meeting on January 10th.
Okay. You would make a motion to accept them as submitted?
Okay. I make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Representative Monahan, second. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to accept the minutes of the, was it a February, what was the date on that? I'm sorry.
January 10th.
January 10th meeting of the Finance Committee.
Do we have the numbers of those referrals that she's talking about?
Yes, the supplemental appropriation for contingency, the number is 2017-0287. The number for contingency transfer for wage increases and other items is 2017-0288. And the number for supplemental appropriation for Town Hall Complex is 2017-0289.
Any other discussion? All in favor of accepting the minutes? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
32. What? 32 here.
Okay. Do you have motion passes? Do you have the minutes for the last meeting that you
Yep.
had, just on the last week?
Mhm. The last meeting the RTM Finance Committee had was on April 4th. It was held in, this says Classroom 1, but I think it should be Classroom A. And it was new business 2018-0025. It was supplemental appropriation for Crystal Lake Road reconstruction project. And I'll read the minutes. Crystal Lake Road project is currently in winter shutdown phase and will resume in the spring. The town was responsible for 10%, $500,500, based on estimated cost of the project to the state, which it has paid. The state estimated the construction and contract administration cost to be $6,249,260 before it went out to bid. Based on the new final construction estimated cost, an additional $116,121 is due to the state from the town. This is in accordance with the project agreement. Funds will come from the Capital Reserve Fund balance. Representative Casper stated that projects go out to bid, and usually at the end of the project there are add-ons because the bid is not exact and additional costs at times are unavoidable. In a memo from Gary Snyder, Director of Public Works, writes that there are no alternatives. Additional funding must be approved. It was the sentiment of the committee that this is an unexpected expenditure, but the road needs to be completed. Representatives asked if this $116,121 was an estimate, or was this the final cost, and will there be any additional funds? How much money will be left in the fund balance? Since no one from the town was at the Finance Committee meeting to answer these questions, the questions will be asked of Mr. Snyder at the regular RTM meeting on Wednesday, April 11th. So a motion was made to approve the supplemental appropriation of $116,121 for the Crystal Lake reconstruction project, and we're bringing it to the full RTM. And Mr. Snyder is here tonight to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Is everybody aware where Crystal Lake Road is? It's over by the Navy
We can approve
base.
the minutes, and then we can go into the
Oh, yeah.
next discussion. So, do you want to make a motion to approve your minutes?
Okay. I make a motion to approve the minutes dated Wednesday, April 4th.
Powers. Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded to approve the minutes of the April 4th Finance Committee meeting. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. Great. So do you want to launch into the next resolution?
Okay. Okay. The next resolution, 2018-0025, supplemental appropriation for Crystal Lake Road reconstruction project. Resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation and signing of the first supplemental project agreement for Crystal Lake Road construction. Whereas the town manager has received the first supplemental project authorization letter from the State Department of Transportation for the reconstruction of Crystal Lake Road, and whereas the state now estimated the total construction cost to be $6,249,260, and whereas the demand required from the town is now $616,621, and whereas the demand deposit previously made by the town was $500,500, and whereas the balance of the demand deposit required from the town is $116,121, and whereas the finance director has determined there's sufficient funds in the fund balance of the capital reserve fund, now therefore be it resolved that a supplemental appropriation of $116,121 be made from the capital reserve fund balance for a new FYE 18 capital project, reconstruction of Crystal Lake, number 5504F, and Town Council authorizes the town manager to sign the first supplemental project authorization letter upon approval of the supplemental appropriation by the RTM.
And you move that.
Do I have,
I so move.
I so move.
And is that a second, Representative Streeter? Yep. So now we have a motion and a second for this authorization to complete the money transfer to the state for the Crystal Lake Road reconstruction project. I guess I should read the whole thing. Do you want me to read the whole thing, Representative? Oh.
No,
Oh.
I thought you were going to call for questions. Since
I'm going to call for discussion. What?
Since the motion has been moved and seconded, I thought you were about to call for discussion. I'm sorry.
I was just reiterating the motion that's on the floor. Do you want to make a point?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to rise? Recognizing you.
I'm sorry, was there a third finance committee meeting that did the other two
No.
projects? No? Okay.
Those are 653.
Yeah. So the extra 116,000, that's approximately a 23% increase above the original estimate. What was the
Mr.
cause of
Schneider,
that?
could you just come up here? Sorry, I just want to be prepared. Can probably help you answer.
So I'd just like to understand what it was that caused a 23% increase above the original estimate. I mean, that seems like a kind of a high number, a high percentage for an estimate.
Excuse me. The project was estimated, by the state DOT, those from their construction office, and that was done in the beginning. There were estimates made based on some soil borings and some test pits out there about the amount of rock that was in the area. There was also some estimates, and because they did the environmentals for the whole road, we knew there was dry cleaners there. We did clean that up to the remediation standards. But there also were several gas stations along that road that the probes that were put in those areas came up clean. As the construction started, and if you were watching it out there, it was one boulder after another, one rock after another. So there was a overage in the estimate for rock removal, crushing removal. There's also contaminated soil that was found out there. It wasn't critical. It was hazardous enough that it had to be trucked away, and there was a mountain of that out there too. So those are some of the costs that gone up. But what historically has happened is that DOT would do the best job estimating up front based on unit prices. They compile all these unit prices on for all the tasks that need to be done into a database. They make an estimate, and then it's really the contractors who bid on it. Really, that's the price of the project. That came in just a tad bit higher than their estimates did, but still within reason. So after calculating everything out, the extras that they knew of already, and what they feel the rest of the project will cost, it came out to that $116,000. Now, we paid 10% of that. The state also had to pay 10% out of their construction funds, and then the feds paid the other 82. So these things were reviewed on a project like this, where the unknowns are. I'm going to say the unknowns that we had out there was the amount of rock that was out there and what was in the soil because of the two gas stations and the dry cleaners out there. I would like to report, though, they're out of winter shutdown. They are working now. They're starting on the bikeway, the 8 to 10 foot wide bike path. So they're starting up at the upper reach, which is Gunchewamp Road. They'll be working their way down Route 12. While we're waiting for Groton Utilities to transfer the utilities from the old poles to the new poles. There was a little bit of an issue of a land take that Groton Utilities had an issue with how it was taken, so that was worked out with the state. So they're starting up now, and once those wires get moved over, then the contractor will be out there full bore. But these were estimated from the state and the contractor's bid prices.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Did you, do you anticipate any additional money being needed, or is this the final installment?
Since this was estimated far enough along where most of the rock work was done, most of the excavations were done, there shouldn't be anything else, but until the final audit is done, the final prices are there. There hasn't been any change orders other than the amount of rock and moving the contaminated soil, and that was because of the quantity, and not because it wasn't a bid price, it was just the quantity that was there.
All right, I just was asking that because that was one of the questions the committee had. So any other questions? No more discussion? Hearing no more discussion, all in favor of the resolution, of the motion as it's on the table? Say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
Oop, was that an abstention?
Was there an abstention? Irma? No, she was
sorry.
scratching her head. Watch that. It's like being in a high-stakes
32-0-0.
auction. Representative Katowski?
I just have a comment regarding suspending the rules. And I know that suspending the rules, I know that once the rules are suspended, you can't make a comment. So
We're not going to suspend the rules. We don't need to. We had, these were referred, the next two referrals, which, Representative Washington, would you mind staying up here and perhaps putting those motions on the floor for us? So let me just explain. The next two motions, the next two resolutions were forwarded from the town council with improper time for it to be considered by a committee. So these have not gone through a committee, but as per our rule 6.5.3, we can take it up without going through committee. So this is a little different situation.
And I'll just add that this happens occasionally, but this time of year more often because we're ending closer to the end of the fiscal year. So we may see this more in the next month. I hope not, but it does not require us to suspend the rules because your rules have a provision for this type of motion or for this type of item. You'll see the town council suspending their rules for the same action because they don't have it in their rules. See? So they have to, their rules say everything goes to committee. Yours do too, except it has these exemptions, and there are 4 different exemptions. So, and this is one of them. So it was referred 7 days in advance, and it can come to the body without suspension.
Okay. 2018-0068, supplemental appropriation from Capital Reserve for the Library Senior Center variable message display sign. Resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation from the Capital Reserve Fund. Whereas a project was approved in the FYE 2018 Capital Improvement Program entitled 4I Variable Message Display with anticipated funding from fundraising and grants, and whereas the town has estimated the total construction cost to be $26,800, and whereas the Groton Parks Foundation has $7,355 for this project from the Senior Center and Library fundraisers, and whereas the town has been awarded a $20,000 reimbursable grant from the Office of Emergency Management for this project, which will be returned to the Capital Reserve Fund, and whereas the Finance Director has determined that there are sufficient funds in the fund balance of the Capital Reserve, now therefore be it resolved that a supplemental appropriation of $20,000 be made from the Capital Reserve Fund balance for FYE 2018 capital project for, is that an I?
Yeah.
I variable message display sign. So I so move.
Is there a second? Representative Powers. So we have a motion and it's been seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Representative Bordelon?
I mean, looking at this and discussing how we're trying to improve our town, this to me is a no-brainer. I think this is great. The funding's there. A company stepped up and supported us, and people raised money. It's pretty black and white.
Representative Mello Miller?
I've been acquainted with this for the last few months because I've been going to the Parks and Rec Committee meetings, and so I want to also include, and you correct me, oh, I'm sorry, I guess Mr. Berry is.
Mr. Berry, would you like to come up here?
Oh, sorry. So correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Berry, but this $20,000 grant will be reimbursed within 8 weeks, correct? Is that what you told us?
I think I said 60 days.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
60 days.
Yes.
And then also what we learned is that this sign will be really neat because it'll be actually, you'll be able to have silver alerts, you'll be able to, for child abduction, road conditions. I mean, this is a sign that's really that people are going to be able to notice, and it'll be able to alert of senior activities and senior classes. So this could potentially boost revenue at the senior center. This can boost attendance at library classes. And also, this greatly, I mean, talking about the beautification of the town, talking about kind of moving our town forward, this is a really professional way of someone maybe is visiting and seeing this sign, and it replaces signs that were blowing over in the wind. And I think this is, like Representative Borderline said, is pretty much a no-brainer. I did have one question for Mr. Berry. And I know that thanks to the great fundraising by the Senior Center and Library, we have over the amount, which includes install of the sign and also maintenance of the update of the software system for the sign. But my question is, how much more money was fundraised? Like how much, for how long, the extra money that was raised, how long will that be able to be paid for maintenance on the sign?
I guess that would depend on what occurs, what comes up with that needs maintenance on the sign. I do want to report that since we put this proposal together, we've actually received more money and still have some outstanding grants. And that money is all sitting in an account with Groton Parks Foundation, and it will continue to stay there so that any issues that come up, we'll be able to address with the extra money that we've raised to this point, and anything beyond that we would put into our special revenue fund. So there wouldn't be any additional cost to the town because it would be paid through that special revenue fund, which is what we collect from program fees.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Whitney?
I guess this is a point of order, actually. I'm still having trouble understanding the rules that we're able to do this on. My specific question is, has this been referred to the Finance Committee? And if not, it doesn't seem to satisfy Rule 6.5.2, where we
It's not referred to the committee, it's referred to the RTM, and we've been doing this since 1956. So, you're questioning something that's really, and I'll read the rule to you so you'll understand it.
Yes, please.
Okay. Under Rule 6.5, which are referrals of matters of committee, go down to 6.5.4. Any matter of proper interest to the RTM may be, oops, excuse me, wrong one. 6.5.3.4. While the matter must have been referred to the RTM at least 7 days prior to the meeting, Town Council may or may not have taken action. Oop, I'm reading the wrong one again.
That doesn't apply.
Okay. Written summary. Matters referred to the committee between RTM meetings must be announced at a subsequent meeting. Such matters may be reported upon by said committee at this meeting. However, for such matters to be acted upon the RTM at the same meeting, the following requirements must be satisfied. So that's the important thing to read. For matters to be acted upon by the RTM at the same meeting that it's referred to, it was referred to this meeting, these items have to be satisfied. The matter must have been referred at least 7 days prior to the said meeting, which it was, and the said committee must have prepared a report, except in this situation, because it's 7 days before, there's no room for a meeting. So that's why we don't have a committee meeting. It's just referred.
But it doesn't satisfy. The said committee must have prepared a report which included recommendations for action by the RTM. So that's not met, and actually it was referred on April 3rd to us, and it's now April 11th.
Excuse me, April 3rd? And
It
today's
says
the
it's
11th?
referred on April 3rd,
Right.
I believe.
That was a week ago yesterday.
And so that's 7 days.
Yeah.
So I don't think we meet these requirements. I might be alone on this.
I agree.
I don't know, we've been doing this forever.
I'm just, so I refer, I'll stand up. I refer to Rule 6.5.2, upon referral of a matter to committee. That I don't believe has happened. But if that had happened, the committee shall report on said matter at next regular RTM meeting or at a special RTM meeting call for a specific matter. Failure of the committee to do so shall place the matter before the RTM for action. So it
Right.
seems to me if it was referred to the Finance Committee and they did not have time to make a report, then we could do that without suspending the rules.
Right.
But I don't see anything that allows us to do this in that situation.
Okay, go ahead.
Representative Monahan?
I think I've been, I know we're
I
referring.
confess that since Madam Moderator mentioned this in our caucus, that I have been reading this section 6.5.3 over and over and over again to come up with the interpretation that Madam Clerk has said. I agree with Mr. Whitney. I think what this says is it still has to go, to me the plain reading is you can't just bring it up. So I think we're back to suspending the rules. I think if you want to act on it tonight, you have to suspend the rules.
Well, I will, you know, I will defer to your rendering of the rule, although we really have been doing this improperly for years. So, you know, you have to consider the RTM as a whole, and when a referral is brought to the RTM, I know.
Representative
But
Kwiatkowski?
why don't we make a resolution to, or a motion to suspend the rules? Get done with it.
Can I just make my comments about suspending the rules that I wanted to make? Okay. Regarding suspending the rules, if the rules are suspended tonight, it will mean that this RTM has suspended the rules 4 times so far this year. According to the RTM rules, which I thought, both of these items, these next 2 items tonight, to be voted on should have been referred to the committee. So the question is, why aren't these items going to the committee? If the RTM does not want to follow its own rules, then change the rules. So every item goes directly to the full RTM and eliminate the RTM committees, or the RTM can follow the rules. For the record, I do not oppose either one of these items.
Representative Monahan?
The response is that the rules are designed to deal with contingencies.
Exactly.
And so to suspend the rules to act on something that needs to be acted on. So you can choose to vote against it, whatever. But, you know, I think we have said in committee meetings, and we did this in the Rules Committee meetings, the preference is to do it through committees. But there are times when you can't do it through committees. This seems to be one of those times. So we have the option through the process to suspend the rules. That doesn't mean that we're just just automatically going to violate the rules every time we want to.
Representative Richards?
Could somebody respond to the implications if we choose to send these to committee tonight and not act upon them?
Oh, okay. Sure. So the reason that we had asked that we kind of fast track, if you will, is we have a deadline by which we have to spend the money for the grant, and if we don't spend the money by that time, we lose the ability to get that money back. So, you know, the bidding process takes quite a bit of time, and we just wanted to ensure that we're giving ourselves enough time in order to get this project done before the grant deadline, and then we would not be able to get that $20,000 back.
Would that deadline be before the next RTM meeting?
No.
So it would be okay to act on it then?
Yeah, we would go out to bid assuming that the RTM would approve this, and if they did not, then we would have to, withdraw those, withdraw the RFP and say that we're not moving forward with the project.
And I assume we'll have the same question for the next resolution as well.
Yeah, but we're not at that one yet. Representative Massett?
Excuse me. The point that we have suspended the rules 4 times, it's well taken, because it seems like, all right, rather than follow our own process, it's easier to suspend the rules. In this particular instance, and I'm not minimizing the resolution, but in order for us just to move on, I feel that we should suspend the rules tonight, do it, get it over and done with. Moving forward, whoever is in charge of making referrals will need to be careful about what goes on our agenda and what we are expected to handle in an evening.
That's well taken. So I would just say, number one, that suspending the rules is part of our rules, as I believe Representative Monahan was trying to make. And number two, I would just ask Representative Massett if she chose to make that motion that she was suggesting.
I move that we suspend the rules.
Is there a second? Thank you. All right, that's not debatable, so let's move right into a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Whitney and Kowalski. Any abstentions? The motion passes.
31 to 0.
32 to 0. 2 people voted.
30 in favor, 2
Oh,
opposed.
30 in favor, 2 opposed, sorry.
And 0 abstentions.
And 0 abstentions.
It's 32 here.
I thought I heard you say 32.
I know, 32 to 0.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, so we have,
Now she can put the.
you want to put that motion on the floor again?
Okay. All right. Resolved that a supplemental appropriation of $20,000 be made from the Capital Reserve fund balance for FYE 2018 Capital Project 4I Variable Message Display.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. Is there any discussion on this variable signage display? Representative Marshall.
Hi, thank you. Would you quantify the risk of the project? So motion is that we would approve this now, so that we have enough of a cushion in the schedule to allow for the project to be completed, so the grant could be repaid. Is there any risk?
We've already discussed suspending the rules and the implications of either not suspending the rules or suspending the rules.
This is unrelated to the rules. It's related to the project.
Yeah.
Representative
Marshall's asking about the risk of the project not going through. So
we haven't voted on the project yet, and if the vote does not succeed, then the project is not funded, period. Is that correct?
That's correct. If what you're saying is the RTM chose not to recognize our request for a supplemental appropriation, we would be significantly short and would not be able to move forward with purchasing this sign.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Representative Washington?
But don't forget, we're gonna pay them the 20,000, and they're gonna put that back into the reserve fund.
Yes,
correct?
yeah, you're getting the full $20,000 back.
So it's just gonna cost us maintenance.
No, I concur, but we have to appropriate the money
Right, right.
Yes.
with the potential risk of us never getting paid back because of the grant, could take, whatever, project could take longer. So that's one issue, is we need to get paid back, assuming the thing gets done on time. But if it doesn't get funded at all right now, the whole thing is dead, was the point that we established just now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
32,
Would you like to read the next one?
The next referral, 2018-0077, Town City Highway Analysis. Resolution for the FY 2018 General Contingency Transfer for Town-City Highway Analysis. Whereas the town charter provides for general contingency transfers during the year, and whereas the town council desires conducting a comparative analysis of the city and town highway operations, and whereas the town manager and the city mayor have agreed that a comparative analysis will be funded at 50% each, and whereas the town and city have selected a consulting firm to conduct such an analysis, and the estimated cost is $70,000, now therefore be it resolved that the town council authorizes a transfer of $35,000 from the general fund contingency account 107415499 to the public works account 103505290 for 50% of the cost of the comparative analysis of the city and town highway operations, and authorizes the town manager to enter into a contract for such analysis. I so move.
Sorry to interrupt, but the town clerk is informing me we should have suspended the rules again to do this. I have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded to suspend the rules. Representative Whitehouse, did you second it?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. It's not debatable, so all in favor of that?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, so we have Bailey, Newsom, Whitney, did you have your hand up? Whitney? Gutowski? Quinn?
Bailey.
Yep, got Bailey.
And Richards.
Richards. Anyone else?
Any abstentions?
No abstentions?
No abstentions.
26 in favor, 6 opposed.
26 in favor, 6 opposed, no abstentions, so the motion passes. What?
Can you talk about it?
Yeah.
So now you've got a motion on the floor?
Oh, okay.
So can you quickly read the motion
Put the
again?
motion on the floor?
Resolved that the town council authorizes a transfer of $35,000 from the general fund contingency account 107415499 to the public works account 103505290 for 50% of the cost of the comparative analysis of the city and town highway operations, and authorizes the town manager to enter into a contract for such analysis.
There's a
So
motion.
moved.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second for it? Representative McDermott, second it. Is there any discussion? Representative Bordelon?
I feel like we're missing something. To me, there's not enough information here. Why are we comparing? What's the long-term outcome, and what's the goal of this, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out. It's like we're comparing apples to oranges. Like, are we trying to figure out are we planning to consolidate, or what's, I guess I would like a little bit more literature about what our long-term plan is and why we're doing this in a nutshell.
Sure. And first of all, no plans to consolidate. We had an arbitration before my time here with the city and the town over funding of the city public work or highway operations. One of the recommendations from the arbitrator is before you come back here, do a study, analyze, compare the two, before you come back here and ever have another fight over it again. So that's what kicked this off before I ever got here, was that arbitration that happened before. So there's kind of two goals. One is the doing common benchmark, picking out some common benchmarks. It could be multiple items to use to compare the functions of the two operations, the city and the town, but also to look individually at their operations, compare us to other places, maybe give us some ideas to gain efficiencies within the departments. Once the study's done, obviously the whole idea is to be efficient and see how we're operating, and then what the city and town councils want to do with that would be up to them at that point.
Representative Frickman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So my concern is we've already spent money on a flawed police study, which thankfully we don't use. And my concern is that we're doing, once again, wasting $70,000 for a study that arguably could we not do on our own?
I don't know if we'd have the expertise for the benchmarking portion of it. Plus, again, we want an outside perspective as to how we're each operating. I can't speak to the police study, really, just that was a bit before my time. But city council and the city mayor believed it was worthwhile to move forward, and our town council did, that they think there's something to be gained out of it. So,
Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. John, quick question. Was this put out to bid? I mean,
Yes, and I'm trying to think, how many bids do we have? About 4 bids. We received 4 bids, and it was a lengthy process, several-month process.
And the arbitrator required this so that we don't end up in arbitration again, correct?
I don't want to say required. It was recommended, and they said basically
Might as well
don't come
be
back
required,
without this.
right. Thank you, John.
Representative McDermott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yeah, there was a terrible amount of bad feeling on this highway situation that we went through a couple of years ago. And I spoke with people on both sides of that situation, from the city and the town. And I really think that we need to do this. It may not solve the problem, but it'll put us on the path to perhaps solving the problem. Because essentially what happened was the arbitrator said that you didn't have enough information to make a good decision in favor of the town. So they gave it to the city. That was my understanding of it. It may be a little off, but that's my understanding of it. So in my estimation, it's important to get this done, even though I'm really not in favor of it, because like Mr. Frickman there, I remember the police study, which went nowhere. And that cost us $60,000, and all those recommendations essentially went down a hole somewhere. The question I have is, what are they going to really do with the information when they have it? Are they going to perhaps use it to enable the city, if they're more efficient at doing some particular project, to do that for the town and the city, or are they just going to get numbers on this thing? Do you know?
Well, it's hard to know until we really get into it, and it's going to be a long process too. First thing is finding common benchmarks we can all agree on. So there's every chance we might get a portion into this and decide it's not getting to where we want it to go. But in terms of what comes out, they'll identify efficiencies or how we're doing universally compared to normal standards for operating these types of departments. But then how are we doing on a common benchmark between the two municipalities, and then what the town council and city council would do with it, I really can't say at this point.
Well, you can have a common benchmark. I understand that. But it would be good going in if we had an agreement that if the town is better at doing something, they do it. If the city is better at doing something, they do it. They obviously have their operating efficiencies, and that was one of the contentions of the study. So I don't know if that goal has been met, if anybody's even talked about it. I can understand wanting to do the study just so we can set up what the costs are for a given project, like putting down sidewalks or a road, something like that. But if it doesn't have any more than that, I would be disappointed. I'd still vote for it, but I would be disappointed that we're kind of short-sighted and that we don't really want to be there. We want to reach a resolution of this particular problem with the city and the town.
I just wanted to say I am fully in favor of if we can find some things we can do for each other and cost sharing, or if we do, I know they do concrete work, whereas I believe we don't, and we do some things they don't. So, you know, that would be ideal, obviously.
Representative Mello Miller.
I was just curious, it says comparative analysis of the city and town highway operations. What is considered a highway and what roads are going to be studied? And also, has there been a study like this before? And if so, what were the results of that?
I'm gonna bring up my expert on the roads, but in terms of there's never been a formal study done. There's been internal, I think there's been some informal studies done, but not a professional study.
So first, what do we classify as a highway, and what are we going to look at?
That's the first question. That is the first thing that we will decide. What is the making and repair of roads? Now, the definitions that we've always used is anything between the property lines, which was street trees, street lighting, concrete curbs, asphalt curbs, sidewalks, pavement markings. Does it include storm drainage? Maybe not. Does it include removal of dead animals? Probably. Storm debris? So one is we have to define what's in it, and these are common to public works departments. Luckily, some public works departments actually maintain rail track. We don't, luckily. So what it will do is to start out with just a simple thing, is that we need to define what is the study going to do. Is it the water pipes in the road? No, we don't maintain those, and neither does the city. So we will first define that. Has there been studies? I've been here since 1933. It seems that long. 34 years now. From what in my mind's memory, there's been 5 times that my department has been studied, either me as an assistant director or the director of public works. There's been 2 that have been done, if not 3, on the comparative analysis. One was done by the previous public works director, Walter Blanker, he has passed, who had done an analysis of towns that he came up with after he had retired. And then there's the last arbitration where we did go out and had a comparative analysis done, selected by the town of comparable cities. That was based on census tract and on the census tract. Census tract, it was population and wealth of the community. And that's where we went for the last arbitration, and we failed. So this will be another look at that. And the consultant is supposed to then identify comparable communities that both the city and town can agree on, then take a look at their operation for the benchmarks.
So can we learn anything from the past analysis? Can we bring anything from these past studies to the table to help us, or is this?
What the consultant will be given all the past studies, and because there's good information there, because both departments had mined their data, the file cabinets on that, and prepared data on what we have maintained, the number of structures we maintain. So we will provide them with that, but they're tasked to take a look at the operation for efficiencies. Efficiencies meaning, you know, are we using up-to-date practices, materials, equipment? Do we have our personnel trained? Items like that. So the past studies will be given to them. What they can glean from them is, I think, there will be some items.
Thank you.
Representative Kachowski.
Thank you. I have a question about what they're actually going to study. I was under the impression that one of the things they were going to study is what we actually put in our budgets. Like, for example, if the city says they spend X amount of dollars per mile of roads and the town says they spend Y, then what are the items that determine those amounts? That's what I thought this was all about.
No, that is correct, and so it's going to be a comparable analysis. If budgeting is different, the city of Groton puts all their benefits, of course, into their application to the town of Groton. It's just like any grant. You put everything in. So they have everything in. If you look in the budget book that the RTM has, the benefits for the department are in another part of the book,
Right.
another part of the book. Also, if you just take a look at Public Works, in the city of Groton, the term, versus the town of Groton, the term. The town of Groton, I have 6 divisions. Closed landfills and landfills that the city of Groton use. So you got to throw those cost centers out. You have to throw out the admin, because I also provide admin for a wastewater treatment plant. They don't. So what the consultant would use, and we did that in the 2015 study, is taking a look at the budgets and then comparable line items. Put the benefits in, put the health services, put the health costs in, put the retirement costs, and so they will do that. We will give them that sheet so they get a good comparison. City of Groton puts capital improvement program projects in their budget. I don't. It's in the CIP. So the consultant will have that whole, what you said, that whole list of things to make sure that we are taking a look at, you know, Part A is Part A, Part B is Part B.
I just wanted to add, it's likely going to be more sophisticated than miles of road. There's much more to it. We had to find a way to account for traffic for Pfizer and EB into the city, for density of the city compared to our roads being more spread out and having less use. So there's a lot more to it than, it's not as simple as it sounds.
So Representative Frickman, I believe you already spoke once, so I have to move this around. So Representative Chase?
Thank you. I'm not understanding why both sides would, since it's only a requirement, I mean a recommendation by the arbitrators and not a requirement. I'm not understanding why both sides want to spend $35,000. I don't understand why two sides can't sit down and compare these things themselves. It was only a recommendation that you create benchmarks and not a requirement, correct?
Frankly, that's failed in the past. That hasn't happened. It's more sophisticated than what's been able to be done locally. The hope is to bring someone with broader experience can help come to a consensus on what those benchmarks are and then study it. So.
Representative Whitehouse?
So I keep hearing about arbitration, and I've not been here since 1933. So I wonder if you could provide a little bit of background on what the background of this is and why there was arbitration between the town and the city, because at least in the short version, because by the reaction it sounds like it's a long story, but the short version of why this is necessary and what this will be addressing.
Okay, this is from my memory, so this is, in a nutshell, this is what, there's a 1933 special act from the state of Connecticut saying that the town of Groton must provide funding for the roads and streets in the city of Groton, because they're town roads, for the making and repairs of the roads in the city of Groton. Making and repairs. What does that mean? Back then, again, the previous public works director would say that paying for the water to water the road wasn't included, but paying for the cart, the cart and the horse to pull it was. So and a definition. So what is a definition? Is the making and repair of. If the town and the city cannot agree on a number, and several times they have not, then it goes to arbitration. And the arbitration panel is the commissioner of the DOT, lucky person. First time we went up there, I think he said what, because he had to dig through the special act. And there's one person that's selected from the town, for the town, and one person selected for the city, So the arbitration panel is 3. It's heard. Everyone presents, it's regular arbitration. Everyone presents their facts and figures to the arbitrator, and then the arbitrator rules. And the last time, as the manager had said, is that the town did not provide sufficient data in a format that she could make a recommendation, that she could compare one to the other, that we didn't make our case. So what it is that the process was, if the two parties don't agree, it goes to arbitration.
So if I understand correctly, so for 85 years we've been arguing over who pays for the roads. If my math is right. Yep. And so the concept of this is to get someone outside who's not from the city or the town to provide some common language so that possibly we won't spend the next 85 years arguing about how we should pay for the roads.
That's the hope. Going back, again, I've been here for 34 years. The issues weren't there 34 years ago, 20 years ago. It just seemed that as probably prices go up and stresses are on the communities for maintaining roads. So it's been the last couple of years, or a couple of years, more than a couple of years, that this has become an issue. So, but the way to resolve it is going to arbitration, and that's where we went, and the town has lost twice.
Representative Bordelon? There are many other people after you, before Representative Monahan, if he so chooses. So, you don't have you're.
Just for clarification, the arbitration is over. So if there was any concern that an arbitrator was saying we should do this, it was a recommendation of the arbitration. It's not, the arbitration is over and done with. There was a fight, went to arbitration, and that was a recommendation. One question is, how much did the arbitration cost? In excess of $30,000? Yes. When you put all of the time, you know, I don't know if you had lawyers.
I can tell you that both sides had attorneys. There's time of staff time. The dollar value, I could not tell you. We would, the number's out there. We'd have to get that number.
So that's one consideration. And the comment about the police study was sort of an identified problem, but it was something to hope to clear up in the future. This is an ongoing 85-year fight, and the idea is that spending this money will help resolve it. And so I think it makes sense to spend the money, you know, even in a tight budget year. Given the result is, we know there's a contention, and unless you actually address it with the study, facts, data, there's just going to be a fight, and it's going to cost more money if we go to arbitration.
Representative Wells?
One of the current counselors expressed to me an interest and thought it would be valuable to subcontract paving and whatnot. And while I don't intend this, I wouldn't I hope to speak for them, would this shed any light on the value of subcontracting some of these functions?
That's one of the functions that happens in both, not contracting, but paving, both city and town, absolutely.
Representative Irma Streeter, unless you want to defer.
No, I think everybody's said what I would have said.
Representative Jim Streeter.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I concur with the last representative that spoke. Clarification, this started in 1903. And there's been conflict since 1903, because I've studied that. However, in the last 10 years, it has kind of bubbled to a point where we have gone to arbitration. And I live in the city, and I support the city. However, it's always our roads need more than what your roads need in the town. And because the arbitrator has suggested that we have this study done, I think will help us to avoid going to arbitration again. We have gone twice, and we've lost twice. We, the town, and that does equate to about $60,000+. By doing this, the $60,000, we won't go to arbitration next year and the following year, it's a wash. So I would recommend that we do go to the arbitration to get a read on what it is. And when he mentioned, Gary Snyder, there is a question. Do the highways include sidewalks? If you will go back in time and look at the highway budgets that the town provided to the city or the old borough, the sidewalks were separate. Somewhere along the line, they started to be included into their budget. And the city does spend a lot of money on sidewalks. Should the town pay for it? I don't know. That's what this study's for, and I would recommend that we go ahead forward with it.
Representative Newsom?
You know, if I thought this study would solve everything, and the city would go, "Oh, you're right. Here's the numbers," and the town would go, "Yeah, here's the numbers," and everybody be singing "Kumbaya," and we'd have a final. I'd vote for this, but I've been doing this too long, and I think you've got two sides. They have their opinions, and when the study comes out, one side is going to contest the results and say, "That's not an apples to apples comparison. That's even though it's from an outside source." We're spending $70,000 of our citizens' money. I'd like to spend this and just get this behind us, but experience tells me that that's not going to be the case, unfortunately. At a minimum, I'm going to vote against this because I think we need a better description of what we're going to be spending $70,000 on. It's extremely vague, and people have an idea, but it's not written down. I'd like to see a better description of what we're spending our money on. Thank you.
Mr. Burt would like to respond.
Points well taken, certainly. A couple of things I wanted to point out, that while there's been earlier studies, this is the first time it's a joint study. 3 people from the town, 3 people from the city. And first step, or one of the early steps, is to identify the common benchmark, which has never been accomplished before. We might get to that point and not get beyond it, so we're not bound to pay the $70,000. We might spend $3,000 and this isn't going to work. We're only moving forward at each stage if there's buy-in from both sides, and that benchmark is really the key to the whole thing, and we'll know that early on. And then just one other point is this process to get the contract is dragged on, and the consultant has we went beyond the time of the bid, and they've agreed to keep it to now, so I'm afraid we're going to have to restart the process if we don't move pretty soon here. We're a couple of months, I think, past where that bid was expired. Yeah.
So I believe Representative Pasqualini.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I concur with Representative Newsom. I'd love to have the study, but I'd also like it binding between both town and city. No matter what the outcome is, you'll both agree to it and not play this, well, they didn't really get all the information. I don't like this. If they recommend that this be done and it saves money, then we do it. And not back out because it didn't go our way or their way or whoever's making the complaint. That's the only thing. I just want it to be everybody's buying onto it and they're going to be bound by it, and not they're providing the information, and the people that are going to do the study should be sufficient enough to make the recommendations by the information we give and what they're able to compile from national standards, and we should abide by it if it's going to save money.
So I think everyone has spoken at least once, and there are 2 representatives that have their hand up again. I'll take Representative Frickman. Do you still have a question, or are you done?
I kind of just follow up now. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Is it possible to fund up to the benchmark and then come back and ask extra funds for the future? So we don't have this whole study that's just going to sit there and collect dust and nobody's going to agree to, kind of like my last 2 representatives talked about.
I would think so. I don't know what that amount is, though. Offhand, I would think so. I just don't know exactly what that amount would be. I would believe so, though.
If I may add, the manager is right, but sometimes it's our own internal process. If X number of dollars are given and we get to point 1, now we have to come back to the town council has made the full appropriation, but now we come back to the RTM, and now we're calling and this is your process, 30 to 60 days to get the second chunk of money. Now the consultant's sitting out there.
And they're not going to sit out there.
They're not going to sit out there, so now they have to pull their team someplace else, because they make money, and then reassemble the team again to come back in. So it is a process. It's not like some other towns where you could go back to the first selectman or something else and say, can you appropriate the second set of money in a week or so, get the authorization. So some of it's the own process here.
And just point out, though, if we don't successfully come to an agreement on the benchmarking, I'm out of it at that point. So there's no point to going forward without that.
Representative Bordelon, did you have a last question?
So I just wanted to clarify, so if we push this through and they still don't agree at the end of it, they can still go to arbitration, technically by legal standing. This doesn't prevent arbitration in that year necessarily.
Correct.
So they could,
That's
more
correct.
money could be added. And my next question was, as far as Mumford Cove and Groton Long Point, that would fall under the town study, or how would that work? How do they fit into this mix?
Mumford Cove is a private
Yeah.
I call it a private association. Those are not town roads, so they do their own thing. It's like a condo association. Groton Long Point's not included.
Groton Long Point's not included. Who services Groton Long Point's roads again, just for clarification?
Pardon me?
The Groton Long Point's roads, those are done.
They have assigned a public works director down there. They do it by contract. We do all the resurfacing. They contract out some of their other work to private contractors. Street sweeping, of course, is private. I do believe they have a private contractor come in. So they go out with their own funds that are given to them and do their own roads.
And the part that you guys fund, that we fund as a town, would that be part of this?
Excuse me, boy, I didn't hear your question.
The funds that we provide to them that we do service, will that be part of this study?
No.
Representative Massett?
Gary, as part of the process, would it be possible to say that the study has to be completed by a time definite? Say from the time they start and give them 6 months. Can we do that?
I think they estimated 4 months for it, but the only thing is I'd want to be flexible in terms of if the holdup's on our part rather than theirs, so.
All right.
Representative Marshall?
Sorry. So as a general question, so our responsibility right now is to approve or not approve this budget. We can't modify it. We can't put any contingencies on it. We can't put any strings on it. We can't do anything other than express the opinion. Obviously, these are valid concerns. So my question to the town clerk is, if with these concerns, what is the right venue for these concerns if they should be brought up somewhere else? Is it the town council?
Oh, definitely. And even if you put them in writing and send them to the town manager, you know, these are
the city manager
very,
too.
very good suggestions, and give them. He can forward them to the folks that are going to be doing the study.
All right, thank you.
I can also give a regular report every month too on how it's coming along, so.
Seeing no other hands in the air, I think we should move to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Okay, start from Pasqualini.
Bailey.
No, Frickman. Then we go backward. Bailey. You put your hand. Newsom. Chase.
Quinn.
Anyone else?
Chase.
Yep, got Chase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Any abstentions? One abstention.
One abstention. That was Kotowski?
Yeah.
Still have 32. So it's 25, 6, and 1. That's right. Too late for me to count. 25 in favor, 6 opposed. 25 in favor, 6 opposed, 1 abstention.
25 in favor, 6 opposed, 1 abstention. The motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Snyder. So at this point, I don't believe there are any more committee reports, but there is an item on the agenda, and I know it's super late, but I just wanted to bring up the idea of the budget discussion, and that it might be useful since, Representative Richards? Oh, sorry, you do have a report. Representative Richards. You can give yours when, well.
No, his goes with
Yours will go, I think, with the budget meeting next month.
Yes.
Representative Richards, would you give your report? I'm sorry. Sorry. It's loud.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sorry, it's getting a little late.
Yeah.
We had a Rules and Procedures Committee meeting on March 14th, and I will read the minutes.
Thank you.
Shall I read them in full?
Yeah, read them and make a motion to when you're done.
Okay. Okay. Location was the Groton Senior Center, Classroom B. Members are Committee Chairperson Kate Richards, Reps Jordan Brayman, Karen Adams, Douglas Monaghan, Irma Streeter, and Michael Whitehouse. Members present, Reps Kate Richards, Karen Adams, Douglas Monaghan, Irma Streeter, and Michael Whitehouse. Members absent were Rep Jordan Brayman. Also in attendance were Representative Roseanne Katowski, Representative Sima Eben, and Representative Beverly Washington. The meeting was called to order at 7:04 p.m. Referral 1 from Representative Katowski. The referral items to the RTM without time for consideration by a committee may not entertain a motion to move the question during debate. So, our discussion of this. Representative Katowski explained her reasoning to be that in a previous RTM meeting where rules were suspended, an item was voted on before it had gone to committee and before all representatives who wished to speak could because there was a motion to move the question. Representative Monaghan pointed out that there are current rules that allow the moderator to continue debate after the question has been moved if debate has not exceeded 10 minutes, and RTM rules state that the normal procedure is to go through the committee. Representative Eben discussed the instance brought up by Rep. Katowski and stated that there had been several hands up to debate when the motion was made to move the question, and it had been more than 10 minutes of debate at that point. All members discussed the meaning of Rule 7.3 and whether or not the moderator could refuse to move the question after it was motioned and 10 minutes of debate had gone by, to which the consensus was that the rule did not allow for refusal after that point. Rep. Streeter brought up that the rules currently state that to move the question requires a vote, to which Rep. Adams commented that sometimes it fails and debate continues because enough members wish to continue the debate. Rep. Richards pointed out measures are already in place to ensure members have enough debate before a vote, including that to move the question requires a 2/3 vote, which is a high threshold and would show that most members are ready to vote on the question. Rep. Whitehouse suggested an amendment to the referral with some stipulation that would cap the debate so that a few members could not speak indefinitely. Discussion was also made by all about the rarity of suspending the rules and voting on an item before it goes to committee. After discussion, Rep. Katowski requested to replace the original referral with a change to RTM Rules and Procedure 7.3 after the original text to add, or 20 minutes if the item has not been through an RTM committee. Further discussion of this amendment included the difference another 10 minutes of debate might or might not make, the time it took to take the roll call votes for motions to move the question, and the current rules about committee referrals and motions. All committee members agreed they were ready to vote on the referral. The amended text of the referral voted on was change RTM Rules and Procedure 7.3, moving the question to read, the moderator may refuse to accept a motion to move the question for 10 minutes after the motion on the floor is made if debate is desired by any member of the RTM. Or, and this is the added part, or 20 minutes if the item has not been through an RTM committee. We voted, and one voted in favor, Representative Whitehouse, against, Representative Adams, and I'm correcting my minutes here, Representative Streeter, Representative Monaghan, and Representative Richards. There were no abstentions. So the committee does not recommend to make this change to the rules and procedures of the RTM. Shall I go to the next?
Yeah, read it, and we'll accept your minutes.
Okay. So referral number 2 from Representative Katowski. RTM committee meetings shall not be held before a regular or special RTM meeting. Discussion of number 2. Representative Katowski explained that this referral is regarding the previous Finance Committee meeting on January 10th, 2018, because the minutes presented in the following RTM meeting were more brief than the ones submitted after the meeting distributed to RTM members. Representative Streeter stated that committee meeting minutes only needed to be a statement of the actions taken, not a detail of all discussion that took place. Representative Richards said, as written, the referral is too vague because it doesn't say how long before the RTM meeting a committee meeting should be prohibited. Rep. Richards also said she was very hesitant to create a rule that takes away the option for committee meetings to occur right before an RTM meeting, because at times there is a need with an important issue when it is referred to the RTM with little notice, and a delay could have unwanted consequences. There was a general discussion about the notice required for meetings and the general rules for referrals. Representative Monahan said that there already exists rules to make sure committee meetings function in a transparent way. Representative Richards noted that when committee minutes are reported to the RTM, there's also a time for discussion, and any committee members or other RTM members can comment or ask questions to make sure all relevant information is shared. It was also discussed that committee meetings are not usually held just before an RTM meeting, and we as RTM members can agree to schedule them on other days ahead of time as a norm and only schedule them for the same day when needed. All members agreed they were prepared to vote. So we had voted on referral number 2 by a show of hands. In favor, none. Against, all 5. It was unanimous and no abstentions. Referral number 3 from Representative Katowski. Move the start time for regular RTM meetings to 7 p.m. Our discussion of number 3. Representative Katowski explained that the RTM meetings can sometimes go later than 10:30 p.m. And since some people need to get up for work in the morning, it would be helpful to start earlier. All members discussed the implication that caucuses would then need to be moved up to, starting at 6:30 p.m., and that this change might be wanted by some members and not by others. After some comments about personal preferences, it was agreed that this question should go to the full RTM. Representative Whitehouse suggested that instead of the committee voting for or against the time change, as all agreed, it should be up to the majority of the RTM. The committee neutrally send it to the RTM vote without a vote from the Rules and Procedures Committee. All members were in agreement to Representative Whitehouse's suggestion, and so we recommend a vote to the RTM. Motion to adjourn, Representative Monahan, seconded by Rep. Adams. Meeting adjourned at 7:54 p.m. Meeting minutes report prepared by Representative Kate Richards.
Would you like to move that?
I move to approve the minutes.
So we have a motion that's been seconded to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Representative Katowski?
I think there's just one little error on the voting.
I think I corrected it. Was that under referral number 2? Yeah. Representative Monahan pointed that out to me earlier. I corrected it on my paper, and I think I said it correctly, but I'll note it to the town clerk before I go. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor of accepting the minutes? Say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the minutes are accepted. So at this point, the committee did not recommend putting forward the first 2 motions and made no vote on the third. So if there is a motion from the floor on any of those 3, we could entertain it. Representative Katowski?
I would like to make a motion to move the start time for the regular RTM meetings to 7 o'clock.
So, Washington. Representative Monahan?
First 2?
I said any of the 3. The first 2 were rejected, the third was not voted on. So we have a motion, and it's been seconded to consider a 7 o'clock start time. Is there any discussion on that point? Representative Streeter. Sorry.
I'm in favor of moving it to 7 o'clock, but I think out of fairness, at least one person on the committee works, comes home, has children, gets dinner, and then it's very hard for them to come in at 7. I just want to make sure that's out on the floor. Thank you.
Representative Bordelon?
I second what Streeter says. Irma, I also agree that I'm for it. I just want to make sure we're not going to lose any members that signed up to be a part of this RTM body, and as a result cannot make meetings if we change it. So I just want to, I don't know how we can bring that up, but I just people signed up with the agreement that they would be here at 7 for the caucus and 7:30 for the meeting to start.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, because what it would mean most likely would be moving the caucus to 6:30. So we're really talking about starting this process at 6:30 on Wednesdays. Representative Newsom, did you have?
Thank you. You made the point I was about to make.
Okay.
Thank you.
I saw some other hands, but I didn't. Representative Marshall.
I have a general question for the town clerk. So as a member, if I don't come on time, I can come late. Is that an accurate? And I may have a follow-up question.
Of course.
So the follow-up question is, if there's not a quorum to meet at 7.
At 7 o'clock, we don't
7
have a
o'clock,
meeting.
then the meeting is
Right,
not happening.
right. I don't believe there's anything in your rules that say that you have a half an hour to try to make a quorum. You laugh, but the council rules do have that.
So that's because that could be something that could mitigate that risk. If there's people that know they can't make it at on time, we have not had an issue with quorum thus far. Obviously, we still have 2 vacancies for me to fill, but.
You can always come late. I mean, you wouldn't be there for the roll call, but then I'd note what time you did come in.
Okay.
As
And
I
the
do note when
risk-
people leave.
The risk of that is that we would not have a quorum for the meeting at all, and the meeting itself would be canceled for that month.
Correct.
And so the follow-up question for that is, if that did get canceled, could we hold a special meeting, or we have to have this body agree to have a special meeting?
You can always call a special meeting. There's provision in your rules.
And that special meeting could then address all the items that would be on this agenda?
Yes, you could.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Whitney.
Thank you. I've got a question concerning when we start that time change. I'd like to see that happen for tonight. But actually, seriously, I think it might make sense to have that change, build in a delay that the change comes in after this budget cycle, because a lot of the meetings, I don't know if it's been posted
They
yet.
all start at 7, except for the one RTM meeting.
So
on the 9th of
maybe
May.
we just so the next RTM meeting, maybe we could have it at the time we do now, and then after that, the next regular RTM meeting, change the time. I mean, in support of the earlier time.
That's good.
Representative Washington.
I'm in favor of the 7 o'clock start time, personally, because I work and I have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I mean, one way we could do it, for me, you might not agree, is eliminate the caucuses. I'm new at this, but I don't think that all Democrats need to be on the same page and all Republicans need to be on the same page. We should be independent thinkers and do what's right for the constituents in our district. Not what's good, okay, all the Democrats are gonna vote this way, all the Republicans are gonna vote that way. We have to get away from that thinking. And I'd be more interested in the end time than the start time.
Representative Washington. I mean White House, sorry. Representative Whitehouse.
Let's do it the simple way. Is there anyone who has a major problem with moving to 7 o'clock?
I have to say, as moderator, I work.
Okay.
I get to eat dinner because it is a little later, and if it was at 6:30, I would likely have low blood sugar by now.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's instead of going around person by person, I'd do a quick show of hands. Who would have a problem with it? Okay, so it looks like that 6 people would really have a problem with it. So I just wanted to get that out so that we see that so it's about a fifth of the body would have a substantial, it would have a substantial problem. So that's something that people should be aware of. I'm actually indifferent as to which time it is personally. So.
Representative Wells.
As I understand, we're required to set our schedule for the year in December. Is this, have we,
You can
has the
change
time
your-
passed for,
No, you can always change the time. You know, it's your rules. Your rules state when your meetings start, and you do submit a schedule in October. You usually vote on it, and that's for the next year. But it's your rules that determine when you start your meetings.
Representative Casper.
Thank you, Madam.
Do we have to change the 10 o'clock rule then to 9:30?
That would be a different motion.
Well, I mean, if the idea is to get out early, then that will also have to happen. Otherwise, we work more hours.
That would be a different motion. Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I agree with Representative Washington about being independent thinkers as far as the caucus goes, but I know we have a lot of new people on here, and I, for one, get to ask a lot of questions in the caucus, and I'm still an independent thinker. So that's...
Representative Richards?
I would just state that it's very difficult for me to get here for 7 o'clock for the caucus. Once I'm here, I'm here. I'll wake up at 6:30 tomorrow no matter what, but that's my commitment, and that's much easier for me than trying to get here at 6:30. So that's where I am on that issue.
Are there any new people who have not spoken yet before I allow people to have a second word? Representative Frickman.
I make a motion to move the question.
Second.
We haven't had 10 minutes yet, so I'm going to take my prerogative and allow Representative Marshall to go. Yeah, but I'm timing it.
So we're about to enter budget season, which all the meetings are at 7 o'clock. I don't know the history of why that is. So as I actually recommend that we table this, as in don't act upon it, and let the schedule that we have unfolded for us over the next 2 months give us a test of whether 7 o'clock actually works for enough of the members, and you're going to get it for free. You don't have to change the rules for that. That's a recommendation. Now, I can change my schedule. I actually don't have to get up as early as others, I think, but we're going to get this for free. I wouldn't recommend that we rush anything. I mean, I don't think there's any harm in waiting.
So that would be making a motion to postpone to a time specific, a definite time in the future, not tabling. Right. That's an indefinite thing. Representative Whitney?
2/3 to get it off the table.
What?
Did you that's a motion?
I made a motion to...
I didn't hear the motion.
I made a motion to table until... Postpone until the June RTM meeting.
To postpone?
Yes.
Till the...
June RTM meeting.
Till the June RTM meeting, and it was been seconded by Representative Frickman. So I believe that's not debatable. I think that's not debatable. But all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion to postpone that discussion till June passes. So.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One.